Hello, everyone. This is your favorite radio host, your only radio host, and favorite girl, of course, Corinne Lafont, broadcasting to you from the lovely island of Trinidad and Tobago. It's a beautiful day, and we're here on Between the Lines. And I always start my show off being thankful, being grateful, whichever word works for you. Although I understand that there's a difference between being thankful and grateful. And I hope you're keeping up with your gratitude journal. There's an app for that, so it's pretty easy to do. Although I'm telling you, it's really discipline and consistency to keep up with that app and to document what you're grateful for every day. But I understand that it's important to write it down. Even though I may say it out to the universe, think it and say it within my heart and soul, it's good to still write it down. So I am grateful to be here. I'm thankful to be here. I'm thankful to be alive. I have another day, another do-over, a new set of blessings. Yeah,
Yes.
great. Yes, a new set of blessings, a new set of mercies. It's a fresh start. So don't make anybody make you think that you don't get a do-over. It's a blank slate every day. Whatever happened a minute ago, last night, yesterday, last year, to hell with it. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to know, not even you. It's today in this moment. So we're focusing on that. And I have a very handsome man here with me, Renaud Purifoy. We would find out more about his name in a while. But let me tell you a bit about him. And this will give you a kind of idea into what we will be talking about today. So Renaud holds a master's degree in counseling and is the author of 4 books. His first book, Anxiety, Phobias, and Panic, which is actually the topic of our conversation today, has gone through 3 revisions and sold over 200,000 copies. Renaud was in private practice for 20 years as a marriage and family therapist. Very good. Specializing in anxiety orders. Imagine that. Marriage and anxiety go together. He retired from private practice to teach at a local college in Sacramento, California, and is now spending his time writing, speaking, and seeing people with anxiety-related problems as a pastoral counselor. So he has upped his counseling a notch. He has also developed a YouTube channel that features videos on a variety of practical life skills. Welcome, Renaud, to Between the Lines.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you. Renaud,
We,
anxiety.
we could add a little bit of conflict along with anxiety in marriage.
I have an issue with that. I really have an issue with that.
Yeah.
People tend to, you talk to people who are married. Recently, I was in a expo that a trade show for persons getting married, a bridal showcase. And I was speaking to couples, all of them or most of them that came in to find out what it is that made them decide they want to get married and stuff like that. And, generally they were together for so many years. Some of them were friends before, they led a life differently. They didn't know they like each other. And then they suddenly come back together. It's like you find yourself later on in life and, you realize you like the person. By
Right.
that time you have grown separately, you have matured, you know who you are, you're whole, and you decide to come together. And some of them realize that they looked at the person as they have grown, developed over the years, and seen them done stupid things, done good things, so they have seen them grow and they realize, okay, this person has settled down now, I'm ready to be with them. So there are different reasons, but my thinking is conflict. People tell you, oh, there must be quarrel, there must be this. I really disagree with that. Why do we have to have a quarrel? Why do we have to have the conflict? Why should there be anxiety? And I noticed in your bio when I was reading it that it's like marriage goes together with these things. Why?
Well, conflict does not necessarily have to be a bad thing. It simply means I want one thing, you want something different. So it's how you resolve the conflict that's the issue. And certainly I've been married, I'll be married 45 years this coming year. And, sometimes I want something different from what my wife wants. And so it's how do we resolve that? Now, you can do it with a quarrel, or you can do it in a way that's going to be friendly. And I think that's the issue, more important than anything else. Because whenever you have 2 people together, there's conflict. Because always, you want one thing, I want something else. I want to go out and have Chinese food. You want to go have a taco. There's a conflict. So how do we resolve that? In fact, it's interesting in marriage. The biggest predictor that it's not going to work is if one of the parties refuses to deal with conflict. if they just say, well, I don't want to do it, or they just, well, whatever you want. Being able to engage and say, well, I'll tell you what, why don't we have what you want this night, and then we can go out tomorrow and have what I want. If you can agree in that way, then that's a good predictor for success.
You're right, how you resolve it. But I still, when I think conflict, I guess because of how we have been trained, you think of something negative. And of course, two people are two different individuals. You would obviously want something different from the other person. It is obvious. I mean, why would people expect to come into a marriage and we're supposed to love the same things, eat the same things, want the same things at the same time? You're two different people.
Yep.
You would have different feelings for different things, whether it's food, whether it's entertainment, whether it's a destination for travel. You will want that. And why can't you both get the same things at the same time anyway? If somebody wants a taco and you want Chinese, why can't you get it at the same time? So I'm eating a taco and you eating your Chinese. Why? Why does it have to be, okay, you get it tonight, I get mine next week? No, I feel for taco now.
Well, that's another possibility. It's whatever works. People have a lot of different ways of resolving it. And like I said, I don't see conflict as necessarily bad. But one of the great ironies of marriage is we get attracted to somebody that usually has some qualities that are very opposite from the way we are. If I'm a very planned out type of person, I like to know where I'm going and have everything decided beforehand. I tend to get attracted to somebody who's kind of a free spirit, just does things spontaneously. Oh, this is so fresh, so exciting. And of course, the free spirit looks at me and says, well, this person is so nice, down to earth, it's so solid, that's great. And you spend the next 45 years, arguing about that. Why do you always have to plan everything?
That's right.
Why can't you just go and do stuff,
Yeah, why do you have to plan everything? Why? That's so boring.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But that's what makes a marriage kind of fun, because you kind of grow together in those areas. So it's a nice thing you can resolve it.
But what is causing these anxiety, phobias, and fears, etc.? The life that we are living, we're looking at now, and let's look at in the past 20 how much years. Why is it that we are having anxieties, and more in today's world, there's more anxiety, more phobias than our grandparents or great-grandparents?
Well, I think it's more things have changed in terms of what we worry about and the things, because anxiety is a normal part of life. Anxiety, apprehension, everybody experiences it from time to time. You go back to like my parents during World War II, lots of anxiety during that time. You have your loved ones going off, overseas to war and stuff, and that's an anxiety-producing thing. I think the big difference is what we're anxious about. Nowadays, especially with the younger generation, so involved with media, they're so worried about self-image, how they're presenting, am I liked? Am I getting enough likes on my webpage, and those types of things. So I think the types of things people are anxious about are different. In the past, it was more real-life dangers and illnesses and things like that. And while those certainly still are part of today's life, you have more and more things that make you anxious, like the news. With people with severe anxiety, a lot of times what I will tell them to start with is quit watching the news. Just get a paper or watch it on the Sunday. But during the week, quit looking at it. You fill your head up with all of this controversy, and it just makes you even more crazy.
Yeah, negativity, right or wrong, propaganda, all sorts of things that have you not sleeping well, eating well. You find yourself helping to perpetuate the media and what they're saying. You're having a conversation with a friend, instead of you having a nice coffee or something, or a nice glass of wine, you end up talking about what you saw on the news. Come on, we're not here for that.
It's okay to be informed, but you just got to take it in smaller doses. I find, because I know what's going on, but I don't spend all my time. I never watch network news because it's just too crazy. And they never give you the full story anyway. So,
exactly.
But the type of anxiety I worked with was more the severe type of anxiety, because everything that's a quote disorder is just an exaggeration of something that everybody experiences. Everybody gets depressed from time to time, but then we get over it and we move on. But then if it's interfering with your life in a serious way, then we call it clinical depression. And the same thing with anxiety. Everybody has, you got a test coming up or a job interview, and so you're a little anxious about it. And that's normal. But if the anxiety is debilitating and it's interfering with your life, then we call it an anxiety disorder. And
how do we recognize that? How do we recognize that, Reno? Because some people may not realize that they may have a disorder or they may be going through a depressive state. Anxiety, we more recognize, we feel this nervousness within our body, our stomach, our chest, and we tense up. Those are the feelings that we get in terms of anxiety, but we may not realize where. We may know what is triggering it, but there may be a deeper issue to the trigger that we are not willing to deal with. How can persons identify not only not only the trigger and what they're going through, but the deeper issue? Why is this trigger? Why am I allowing this trigger to take me to the point of anxiety and then to depression?
Well, most of the people I dealt with had something called panic disorder. And so they were having panic attacks, and they seemed to occur for no apparent reason. And if you think about whenever you've been the most scared in your life, for me, it was when I almost got in a car accident, and your heart's pounding and your foot's shaking on the accelerator, and you pull over and you calm down, you go on, you're fine. But everybody's had an experience like that at some point in their life, and usually there's something outside that explains why it happened, so it's no big deal. It stops after the event is over. But if you start having those kinds of experiences for no apparent reason, you're out in the supermarket or you're driving your car or you're just out someplace and suddenly your body starts to react like that, and there's no clear reason why it's reacting like that, then that gets your attention. And so what happens is, number one, they start doing what we call catastrophic thinking or negative anticipation. What if this is a brain tumor? What if I'm ill? What if it happens again? What if I can't control it? What if some people see me with it? And then they also tend to start kind of watching their body. And normally you're not that aware of your body, but they start kind of monitoring what's going on. And whenever they experience any kind of feeling that's similar to the panic attack, then they start doing negative self-talk. Oh my gosh, here it's coming. And then pretty soon they start talking themselves into these panic attacks. And then they'll start avoiding things because of fear. If every time you go to the supermarket you have a panic attack, the most logical thing to do, and you don't know how to stop it or why it's occurring, the most logical thing is, well, I'll just quit going there. And so what happens is they start avoiding things. And then so they always know that there's a problem. It's just they don't understand what's happening, why it's happening, or what to do about it. And so that's what we dealt with.
Deeper? How do you get deeper instead of avoiding it? Because you can't run from things all the time. How do you deal with it?
Well, we're dealing with a special type of case here. And first of all, that they tend to have, there's a variety of types of people that will have panic disorders, but the most common person that I would run into would be somebody who has a very sensitive, reactive body. So everything is on what we call the normal curve. Some people are tall, some people are short, and then there's the average height. And so likewise with your nervous system, some people have a very reactive nervous system, and some people don't. The people with the non-reactive nervous systems, you got to kind of slap them upside the head to get them to notice something, right? And the person with a very reactive nervous system, they tend to pick up on a lot of stuff. In fact, I used to tell them, in fact, I still do, that it's your best quality because it makes you more empathetic. You notice things that are going on with people. It's the thing about you that your friends and your family and your kids really like because you really can tune into them.
Yes.
The negative side is it's kind of like a house where the wiring's not quite up to code. And if you plug too many things in, the circuit breakers trip. Yeah. And so if they're doing too much, then they'll start having these reactions. And so typically what will happen is you'll have somebody like that, and oftentimes they're a little bit perfectionistic. They need to do things right, or they have a high need for approval. And so I'll say, so tell me what was going on when you had your first panic attack. And they'll say things like, well, I was going to school and I was working a couple jobs. My dad had his heart attack. My fiance decide they didn't want to get married, but I don't understand why, this happened. And then it's like, you look at it, you say, wait a minute, back up the bus here. I think I figured it out. Their initial panic attack is usually just a stress reaction, but they don't recognize it because they're busy taking care of business and doing everything as well as they always do. And so then it takes on a life of their own because they start doing that internalization and that negative anticipation. And pretty soon it becomes what we call a conditioned response. You've probably heard of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And there's a thing that happens with people where when you think you're in danger, whatever's going on at that moment imprints on the brain as a danger signal. So if I'm in a bad car accident, or if I'm in a war theater or something like that, the sights and the sounds at that moment imprint as a danger signal. So whenever I encounter them again, my body goes on alert. And that's a protective thing, because throughout most of human history, most of the dangers we faced were physical dangers. And so we needed to be alert whenever something would indicate that that danger might be present. And so what happens is you encounter that signal again, and then that will cause that alert response in your body. And of course, what happens with panic disorder is they've now trained themselves that a lot of normal things are dangerous, and so they start reacting all the time to them. Okay. So basically, it's just a process of winding that back down. You explain the process, and they go through a process of what we call desensitization.
So how can someone I'm thinking of practical steps. If you can give us like 2 or 3 practical steps that someone can take, in situations of attack,
right.
Living in a household where they're extremely sensitive.
Yeah.
What can they do?
Yeah. Well, for again, with panic disorder, basically the first step is just learn how to manage the symptoms. And so self-talk is a real big one. Identifying, in fact, this goes to all kinds of different types of anxiety. So for example, let's maybe switch gears for a moment and talk about public speaking. A lot of people are terrified of speaking in public.
Oh yes.
And
sweaty
most
palm,
of the time, and most of
shaking, everything,
yeah. And most of the time I found that really comes from right around junior high school, that time period in your life. Because when you're in that period of your life, peer pressure is very, very important, right? And if you're kind of maybe a shy person, or maybe not a very social person, and maybe somebody laughs at you, or you're overly concerned about what people will think, that's kind of your experience from that point on. So the self-talk would be, okay, first of all, I'm not in junior high school anymore. I'm an adult, and most people really don't care that much about what I'm saying. I mean, that's the truth, right? Most people are so involved with what I'm going to have for dinner, or where I'm going after that. They'll pay attention, but then after it's over, they're busy back with their life again. So most people really aren't going to be paying that much attention. If they are, they're going to be as kind as I would be. If I see somebody make a mistake, I'm not going to laugh at them like kids do, when they're little. I'm just going to be kind of compassionate, and most people will be like that with me. So that type of self-talk really helps. And then there's some, really simple things you can do, like a relaxation response. I would train people to do that, get relaxed, and then have some kind of a cue that would trigger it in their body. Doing something with what they call combat breathing, where you breathe in through your nose to the count of 4, and you hold it and you breathe out. Do that a little bit before you get in. That just calms your body down. So that's something they teach you in the military. So things like that will really be practical. But the self-talk is really the big key. Understanding what's going on and telling yourself what's happening. For like, if there's a traumatic component to it, like a car accident or something like that, or maybe you came out of an abusive family, then the basic idea is what's happening, what's real. What's happening, I'm reacting as if I'm still stuck back at home. What's real is I'm never going to be back there again. I'm in a different world. I'm an adult. I have adult abilities.
Yes.
Once I understand something, everything should be fine. And the thing is, most of human behavior has a conditioned response element to it. It's the old Pavlov's dogs. You put meat powder on the tongue of the dogs, you ring the bell, and pretty soon, whenever you ring the bell, they salivate for you. And again, that's the PTSD model, right? And so if I hook you up to a wire, and every time I say purple, I give you a shock, pretty soon you're going to kind of jerk around a little bit every time I say purple. Now, I can dismantle a wire. I can promise you I'll never shock you again. And you can believe me, but I guarantee next time I say purple, you're going to jerk a little bit. And eventually, you'll quit doing that. You will desensitize. In fact, we all have experienced desensitization. Your first job, you're probably a little bit anxious. But after you got there, you got used to it, then you calm down. And so that's just a normal process when you're going through any kind of anxiety producing situation. Is you can train yourself to get used to it. In fact, you look at the things that people get used to around the world, it's amazing how we can desensitize to it. The
Yeah.
key is self-talk. That's one of them.
I love that.
Self-talk and a willingness to expose yourself to the event
This self-talk is
and
very
manage the
important.
anxiety.
This self-talk is very important. I think that's one of the major ones, because coming back to the whole thing about public speaking, when you look at the people in the crowd, the audience, you tell yourself, listen, you're on the stage, you have the privilege to be on the stage to speak in front of all these people, but all those people are afraid to come up on the stage to speak. If you were to really call one of them, they would be shaking worse than you up on that stage. So we all have that fear of speaking, or fear of something, and you are no different from anybody else, or they are no different from you. So your fear is okay. It's okay, and they are going to be kind to you. And those who are not, they are the ones who are really more afraid than anything else, because the people who are more scared, they tend to be the ones that jeer at you and poke at you and make sarcastic comments. If you were to call them up in that moment and say, come up, they will not venture up on that stage. So the self-talk, I think, is extremely, extremely important. I want to move across to something I read in not necessarily in the bio that I did when I introduced you, but in looking at your website. And also I think it was mentioned in your bio, you moved into pastoral counseling, and I think I saw, correct me if I'm wrong, that you delved more into a Christian perspective when you were not before. Was it that you were an atheist before, agnostic? What was it?
No, that's a long story. My parents dropped me at church when I was little to get moral training, and so as a kid, Jesus was my friend, and I was very much into that. And then we moved, and nobody in my family really went to church or anything. So around junior high school, I dropped out because there was no support. And then I got involved with science. My original degrees were biology with chem and math minors, which made me kind of an unusual counselor, because most counselors come out of the social sciences. Right. But I was always interested in animal behavior, and so back then it's called entheology. And so I made the switch from animal behavior to human behavior, which some people consider a step down, but it was it's people are not that hard to understand once you kind of really figure out what's going on with them. But I was searching, so I was a Buddhist for about 5 years, and then I went into New Age stuff for about 5 years, and then I got my counseling degree and was into psychology for about 5 years, and then my son was about 5, and so I decided it was time for him to get to some moral training, so I'll take him to church. And so I said, well, unlike my parents, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I'm going to at least sit in the church, right? And so sitting there and hearing the gospel from an adult perspective, it was like it captured me again. And so I rededicated my life to Christ. And, then, of course, my wife, she is Asian, and her family was Buddhist. In fact, I recruited her into the Buddhism when I was during that phase of my life. So she'd seen me go through all these 5-year periods. And so she says, well, I'm going to wait to see how long this one lasts, right? But eventually she started coming in. So we've been part of this church now for a little over 20 years. So
okay, good. And it has how has delving more or getting back into the Christian world helped you in terms of counseling your clients and for you in your business?
Well, it's different when you're working with somebody who has no spiritual core as opposed to somebody who does. I'm thinking of a lady I worked a long time ago, and she was older, and her body was starting to fall apart, and she was fairly wealthy. And so I asked her, I usually would ask clients, well, tell me a little bit about your existential beliefs. Why are you here? What's your purpose in life? Is there a God? Is there no God? What are your ideas about that? And so her response was, well, you're here to get things, enjoy them, then you die and it's all over. And so, I'm thinking, well, you've got a reason to be anxious about what's going on with you, if that's your perspective on life, all right? So when you work with people, again, who have a connection to God, it's interesting because you'll talk about things, and then during the week, they will run into all kinds of things that reinforce what you've been dealing with. People will suggest books to them, or they'll hear something on the radio or whatever. And so it's like, like God works with you in the process,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't heal anybody in an hour once a week. It's a process where you give them some tools, they have to go out and use the tools. And then when you have God working with you on those tools, then it's like night and day in working with people. It's because so many of the things that contribute to anxiety have to do with what you were mentioning before, some of those inner issues. In fact, when I would find people who where maybe were doing fine, they come back after 6 months and they'd say, well, I don't understand why I'm starting to have some symptoms again. So I'd say, okay, let's go through the checklist. Uh, how's your primary relationship? How are the kids doing? How's work going? Life goals? Anything unusual happened recently? And usually there would be something in their life that they would say, well, this happened, but it wasn't that big a deal. And so I'd say, well, okay, your symptoms are telling you it was a big deal. You need to deal with it, because all symptoms usually are simply messages. In fact, that's the key to long-term recovery, is to understand that the anxiety is just a message that you have some business to take care of.
Wow.
And so you need to identify what is that business and take care of it. Because if you don't, because again, a lot of people I would work with, they would have maybe, most commonly it would be a relationship thing, something going on in their relationship. But rather than dealing with it, they'll just say, well, it's okay. And they push it down, and then it starts to surface as this free-floating anxiety, which if you have a panic disorder in your past, will then start to generate a lot of the panic disorder symptoms.
Yeah, it's always relationships.
So,
That's the most difficult. It's the most troubling. It's the hardest. It really attacks you at every level, spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally. I guess if we were alone by ourselves, we wouldn't be having that problem. But once we decide to interact with another human being, it's gonna be a challenge. Wow, it's gonna be a challenge.
But we are relational beings. In fact, there's three basic things you need to be happy in life. One thing is you do need relationships. People who do not have quality relationships, they get really funny over time, right? They kind of twisted. So we are relational beings. We need a relationship. We need a purpose in life. When you have some purpose and reason for getting up, life is just lighter. Time goes by faster. Everybody listening can just think about a time in your life when you had some goal you were working towards. Life was different from during a time when you had no purpose or goal. Then, of course, the third thing is that spiritual, existential core. Some kind of a belief system that helps you manage those times when everything goes upside down. In fact, when you look at the stories of people where they've had tragic things happen to themselves and then they've come out, reasonably intact, you find two things are true. One, they usually have a relationship, that's helped to ground them, and they have some kind of belief system that helps to anchor them as they go through that. It's if you got those three things, you do fine in life. You may bend, but you'll come out of it.
Yeah. And the whole point about it is why make a mountain out of a molehill? Stop fretting, stop worrying. Everything always ends up working out the way it's supposed to, whether you have anything to do with it or not.
And if you have that as a core belief, then you're going to manage things a lot easier. But not, it's easier said than done.
I know, but why fight over it? I mean, you're stressing yourself out, building up anxiety, phobias, fears, panic. And you really have no control. When you take a step or two back, you realize I have no control over this crap. Let it go. And when you think back, if you were to sit and think back on past experiences and you look at, oh my God, I actually overcame that. I actually came out of that. I'm still alive today. What did you do? Nothing. It just worked out. So why is this any different?
That's, and that's interesting, because one of the things that, again, people with severe anxiety do is that negative anticipation. Well, what if this, what if that? And I would always tell them, you are a lousy fortune teller, because, all the things they would tell themselves, they would not come true, So, you are no prophet, because you are not good at predicting the future. But that philosophy that you just expressed, if you can adopt something like that, it really does help you. People would worry about plane flights or this or that. And I've never worried about that, because my idea is, if there's a purpose for me in life, God's going to keep me here. And if not, I'm out of here. So it's out of my hands, one way or the other,
Yeah, and if the problem is created, he's going to get you out. He probably have you in that situation
Yeah.
to learn a lesson, which is what we're supposed to be doing, learning a lesson from everything. And until we learn that lesson, we may not
Yeah.
get out, or he may say, okay, Renault has learned something from this. I'm going to take him to the other stage now, you know,
Yeah.
and so he doesn't feel that much stressed. And so you realize as you go through the journey, you're learning, you're growing, and it's not as bad. You know, the point about it is don't resist. I think once you start putting up resistance is when you start getting the anxieties, phobias, fears, and panic. Do not resist. The more you resist, it comes like you're going down a river. And I've looked at those people who do river rafting and, you know, those type of things. You
Mm.
cannot resist the flow of something. It's going to be worse for you. Do not resist the flow. This is where it's taking you. Just
Yeah.
relax and go with it, you know, and maneuver as you
Yeah.
go along. Maneuver as you go along. I'm not
Yeah.
saying to just throw up your hands and don't do anything, but watch where the wave is taking
Yeah.
you. Watch where, you know, look out for the little rocks. Try to do what you can do to avoid them so that you don't get too much damage. You will get damage.
Yeah.
Believe it, you will get damage. But you will come
Mm.
out alive at the end of it. Believe
Yeah.
it or not, you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotations is, in life, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional.
For
We
sure.
will experience pain.
For sure.
How much we suffer is up to us.
That's
So,
a great way to finish off the show because pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And a lot of people seem to choose suffering. I don't know why. You know, they just love the self-torture and suffering. That's a great way to round up this. Tell me your
yeah.
website,
Well,
Renaud.
let me,
Go ahead.
it's why emotions, why emotions.com, and then
Why?
from there you can get into the YouTube channel and the books and everything.
Okay, hold
So
on.
whyemotions.com.
whyemotions.com.
Emotions.com.
All right, hold 1 second. I'm bringing up the page. Here we go. Is that you?
That's me.
Yes.
I'll have a new picture next year. I'm getting some more pictures now. That one's about 10. That one's been up there a while.
Yes. But you still look good. This was you had on much more weight than what you are now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a heart attack, a couple stents, so the doctor said, lose weight or die. So I said, okay, I'll lose some weight. So
You chose to lose
I'm
weight.
out about.
You chose to lose weight rather than okay, that's a good choice.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing. My thing is life is a series of choices. You choose to do things because you're going to get some goodies. You're going to avoid some bad stuff. And,
Yeah. That's what it
so
is.
Yeah.
So
I'm down about 50 pounds now.
Oh my, nice. Looking sexy and slim. So here we go. You have all your books here. These are the 4 books, and there are some free things that persons can get access to. Your video lessons, MP3s, radio interviews, and some articles. You said you have
a web page. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to put that as a link down there when I redo it in January.
Okay, no problem. What is this about Greek here? Greek class? You speak Greek?
Well, biblical Greek. Yeah, I took some when I was in seminary. I learned biblical Greek, and so I've translated to the New Testament just in my own notes for people who are interested in it.
Okay, nice. So Renaud Purifoy, explain that name to me. What does that name mean? Where is it from? What's your origin?
Well, it's anglicized French. So pure foi would be the French. It basically means pure faith. Nice. And the French invaded England in 1066. And so I like to say that's when my people came over and took over England. And then from England, it came into the U.S. and from there it's finally arrived at my name. We had the spelling. The spelling's kind of different from the way the traditional spelling is. We think somewhere during the Civil War here in the U.S., one of the guys, they either were illiterate or they didn't like the rest of the family, so we stuck the E in there. So
nice. I'm actually watching the cover of this book here, and I'm seeing you would watch it and you would think that it's all birds at first look, but is it a chain that's trying to?
Yes, that's a chain.
Is it trying to capture, or the birds have been
No,
released?
it's break.
Have gotten
You're
free?
breaking
You're breaking
break
free.
free. Yeah.
Yes. It could also mean the other way too. The chain is trying to capture them, but they are not allowing it. They are
Okay.
not allowing it. Yes. So besides them breaking free, the chain is coming after them to try and capture
Yes.
them, but they are
Yeah.
not allowing it. They're getting free. Nice.
Yeah.
Overcoming anxiety from short-term fixes to long-term recovery. Wow.
Yeah.
The
That,
meaning. Mhm.
that was a fun book because I follow three people as they go through the process of having severe anxiety, then finally getting to the point where it's no longer a problem.
Nice. So you have the book Anxiety, Phobias, and Panic, Anger, Taming the Beast. Lord, that's another
Mhm.
serious thing. A lot
Yeah.
of people are angry. They need anger management. I'm telling you, they need anger management. And
Yeah.
those things to me comes from fear. All of it comes from fear and childhood unhealed wounds, things that they,
Mhm.
even epigenetics, which is something I'm
Yeah.
learning about as well, that they're not even aware of in the womb, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting field, epigenetics. And actually, if we want to take just a moment to explain emotions, because they're really not that hard.
Mm-hmm.
I put emotions into a couple different baskets. You have the positive stuff, joy, fulfillment, excitement.
Mm-hmm.
Simply means a need's going to be met.
Mm-hmm.
If a need is threatened, you're going to experience anger or fear.
Mm-hmm.
If the threat is something that's manageable, you tend to become angry. If the threat is unmanageable, you become fearful. And then if there's a loss, you experience the sadness, grief, depression constellation. And it's really no more difficult than that. Emotions are simply meant to drive us to take care of our needs and protect ourselves from threat. So again, if you're angry, there's a threat somewhere. And so the question is it a real threat? And
Mm-hmm.
is my behavior going to resolve that threat, with the least amount of harm to myself and others? Then the anger is probably appropriate. Because
Yeah.
we don't realize that all these emotions are on a continuum. So when you're irritated, that's just low level anger. If you're enraged, that's the dial turned up.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can be irritated and take appropriate action, right? In fact, that's the whole key with a lot of anger management is dealing with it early on while you're still under control and you're still rational. And of course, so much of how we deal with it, with the threat has to do with childhood training. Some people just learn. You just go out there and you bust heads and you take care of it, right? And that's your angry people, right? And a lot of times that's from role modeling. A lot of times it has to do with just where you grew up. That's the way it was done. But so much of that stuff is just habit pattern.
Yeah.
Changing those habit patterns take time though, because we learn things so well that they become automatic.
Yeah. And that's the thing, habit forming, and we don't know.
Yeah.
And you see, we were born to parents because, we don't know and we are depending on them. So they actually help to form us into who we are today. And it's only later on when we recognize there's an issue, we decide,
Mhm.
no, if we recognize and we make the choice that we want to change, we have to take things in hand and do something about it, you
Yeah.
know. Very good, very good. Emotions. And sometimes the emotions are not real. Your mind tells you things. And of course, if your mind tells you things and link it back to something from in the past or something that you've heard, you automatically, your body is going to react with emotion. So sometimes, as you said, it's not real. And you have to be able to discern when something is real and it's not real.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I would just say the emotion is real, but the things that's causing it, the perception is not real.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that is it, because it's the perception that's causing
Yeah.
the emotions, You have to
Yeah,
know.
we're seeing threat or loss where no threat or loss exists.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's triggering the emotion for threat
Mm-hmm.
or loss when again there is no threat or loss.
And that's where the self-talk comes back again. You have to talk
Yep.
to yourself.
Yep. What's
Talk to
real?
the
Yeah.
situations. Take a step back, and don't
Yeah.
be so caught up in it, because the more you're in it is the more you wouldn't see. So you have to step back, calm down, and just
Mhm.
talk to yourself. Wow,
Yeah.
Renaud Purifoy, author, teacher, and speaker, pastoral counselor. Yes,
Mhm.
Renaud
Yeah.
Purifoy. Thank you so much, Renaud. I mean, we've had a wonderful conversation. We've touched on a number of things, and I
Hmm.
hope that with you know, the steps, especially the self-talk and the tips that you have shared, that persons, especially going into 2019, because, you know, at this time of the year, everybody's a bit anxious. They're looking back at the year and doing the assessments and creating the
Yeah.
so-called resolutions. And there's a lot of anxiety, even though it's supposed to be a happy time. You know, people are anxious or create anxiety within themselves because they're like, I haven't done what I was supposed to do, and oh, I'm a
Yeah.
failure, and oh, I'm going to
Yeah.
make it different in 2019, and oh. So,
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I put a video up on YouTube on holiday anxiety, dealing
mm,
with a lot of that stuff.
mm, yeah.
And very,
And
very
even
common
going
this
with
time of
the
year.
family, meeting family you don't really want to meet, that is
Hmm.
anxiety itself, all the dinners, all the get togethers.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Thanksgiving is coming up. Oh, geez, all of
Yeah.
that, you know. So you have anxiety right, wrong, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I will tell anyone, you have the Thanksgiving dinner to go to. If you don't want to go, don't go. If
Yeah.
you don't have to, you don't have to. What are they going to do? Talk about you? Say you're missing? Let
Yeah.
them talk. You must do what you need to do for you, not for anybody else or to please anybody else. Do what you need to do for yourself to please you. Whatever makes you comfortable, do it for you. Yeah.
Hmm. Yep.
Thank you, Reno. Thank you, Reno Purifoy. I mean, it's been a pleasure having you on Between the Lines.
Yes, it is. So thank you very much.